All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yes, well, thank you. It is a great thrill to be here with Kim, with the commissioner, with you, even in the way that I am, to try to, that is to sort of say recorded, to kick off yet another day of the tournament on top of the tournament.
Yeah.
Now, Mark's Madness.
Yes, we pit one drop up against another. Kim will keep you updated on all prior voting.
Yep.
But today, in this hour, we kick it off with a couple of well-known drops. Either...
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Or...
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
So you vote for wild idea.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Or you vote for...
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
So the voting continues all hour in the chat, and it continues all hour in the YouTube poll. After that, the voting continues until midnight in the community section of our YouTube channel. And there, again, you go to our channel, and then you'll see home, live, videos, community. Under community, there will be an ongoing poll until midnight tonight. So we keep the voting open later, of course, Kim, because people check it out in replay. People watch the show in replay a lot.
It's the beauty of the Mark Thompson Show. You can get it whenever you want.
It's the beauty, really, of, I'd love to take credit, but of this new platform. Yeah, so you can get it whenever you want.
Also, some people listen on the podcast on the way to work, and then they can come back in later and vote on the community
Exactly,
section.
right. So if you're listening to the podcast, just jump on YouTube, come to our channel, the Mark Thompson Show channel, and you can vote. You don't need to be registered. You don't need to be, it's all free. You can participate, and you're a key part of Mark's Madness. So that's your update. Again, either you'll vote for wild idea.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Or you'll vote for...
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
I feel this is a tough one to call. Commissioner,
That's nearly impossible.
This is a tough one, huh?
It is a tough one, but I'm willing to bet my lunch that one of these two will make it on.
That's why he's the commissioner. All right, Mark Thompson Show. Thanks, Kim.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It is the Mark Thompson Show, and we are without Mark for another day as he toils away making real money at KFI. But he will be back on Thursday. This is the Mark Thompson Show. We promise he's coming back.
He's coming back. He's just filling in at KFI. He's not ditching the Mark Thompson Show on YouTube. We just wanted to clarify. He got a couple emails.
Yeah.
Very concerned people worrying that the Mark Thompson Show on YouTube will not have a footprint.
Right. And one viewer said, is it the Kim McAllister Show? It is not. It is not that, Vilma. It is not. It is the Mark Thompson Show. And he's just taking a couple days off to make some, do the whole paying job thing, which, hey, if that's what keeps our show afloat, we are down. So thank you for being here. We'll have little snippets of Mark through the show talking about Mark's Madness. And Albert, what did we come up with yesterday? How did that all shake down?
Yes, I'll just quickly go over the winners, and we have David Cay Johnston waiting here in the green room. Yesterday, my bad, I'm sorry, and seriously, WTF won. So Trump order lost, and processes and protocols also lost. So if you're following your bracket, I have just updated it. You could go and check in the standings. And we'll go from there.
Before we get to David Cay Johnston, I wanted to just touch on this because it is a rainy, stormy day around California. As a matter of fact, ABC's storm level puts it at a level 3 today, and they're saying big wind gusts, especially on the peninsula. Santa Cruz Mountains already saw a deadly accident. It is coming down in a deluge here in Petaluma. How about down where you are, Albert?
Yeah, in Union City, it's coming down pretty hard here, and it's been pretty constant since early this morning. So keeping my fingers crossed. I just want to have a tea time on the weekends, and it hasn't been that way since this whole winter. We asked for some rain, we got a little too much rain, and I haven't been able to play golf at all.
Well, they put out a high wind warning today, and there's a flood warning as well. So be careful out there on the roadways. Without any further ado, he is award winning. He is amazing. He is an author and a writer and the best guy around. David Cay Johnston with a T. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Tim.
You would think that I would have gotten it right, but
that's all right. From nice and warm Western New York.
Oh,
unlike my home state of California, the weather has been very nice this winter.
Oh, wow. Okay. I wanted to ask you about these pictures last time I had you on, and I didn't get a chance to, but there's some really cool art right behind you, like a hand-drawn portraits of, I'm assuming that's you and your wife?
It is, and the one to my wife was a gift from a friend, and we commissioned the other. David Coates did this kind of graphic art portraits for Entertainment Weekly magazine for years and years and years. Of course, that magazine no longer is around in print, but he lives here, and we have a lot of the art in our home. Not all of it, but a lot of it is from artists here in Western New York, because there's a very large arts and artisan community. I used to be a trustee of a fine arts school called Visual Studies Workshop. Years earlier, one of my children got her master's degree at that institution, founded by a famous photographer named Nathan Lyons. And anyway, they were. We liked the one my wife got, so we commissioned the other one, and they weren't expensive. So
they're really special. They're really cool. I like them.
Yeah, I think hers is a lot better than mine. Beards don't work quite so well.
Well, I like how it seems like often you're in a different spot in the house. And so I really get to see like your whole environment. It's been great.
Yeah. There's a lot of places I can't be in my house because of the nature of it. We live in a house designed by an architect who was a fan of Frank Lloyd Wright. And it has the beauty of such a home without the terrible expense if you buy a Frank Lloyd Wright home. It also has every single flaw that Frank Lloyd Wright has. Anyway, you wanted to talk about other things more significant.
I mean, how can we not talk about Trump? Because today was supposed to be the big day where he said on Truth Social, as if anyone pays attention to that, but I guess we did, that he was going to be arrested today. And please come out in the street and protest, and let's get let's tell him I shouldn't be behind bars. But now they've got the barricades all over New York. Trump Tower's barricaded off because of the likelihood of protest. The Manhattan court is barricaded off. And now it looks like maybe he won't be arrested today after all. What are your thoughts on all this?
Well, Donald, had no notice that he was going to be indicted or anything else. He read some news reports that his indictment could be as early as Monday. And his longtime lawyer and advisor, Bob Costello, former federal prosecutor, was called as a witness on his behalf before the grand jury. New York has an unusual grand jury law. It's not like California law. If you are called subpoenaed to appear before a grand jury, you cannot be prosecuted for anything you tell the grand jury about. You get transactional immunity right there. In a place like California, that's not true. In the federal government, it's not true. In fact, I don't know anywhere that that's the case except New York. You want to know when this is going to happen. When does Trump's jet, or he has two of them, when does his jet leave Palm Beach, Florida airport?
That's what I was thinking. I mean, here's a guy with the means to get away, right?
Well, I don't. Donald, first of all, here's why he'll surrender and behave on this level. He will be released on his own recognizance, as I think he should be. He shouldn't be treated differently than anybody else.
Sure.
For the kind of crime he was accused of, provided he shows up in court, he does what he's supposed to do. The worst thing Donald could do is to say, I'm going to fight extradition, because eventually he will be extradited and a judge will say, well, you're going to sit in Rikers Island.
Yeah.
So that shouldn't surprise people. But look, Trump is going to do his very best to try and get his supporters to engage in a level of violence that he thinks will intimidate the prosecutors. It's not going to. It is not going to. He may cost the New York taxpayers a fortune in overtime. An order went out this last night that every single New York police officer who is not undercover is to show up and work today in uniforms, or as it's known, in the bag.
Oh.
And that suggests that they are concerned they might have an all hands on situation. One police plaza is not very far from the Manhattan County Courthouse, New York County Courthouse. But I'll be surprised if there's a lot of violence. Look at what's happened to the 940 people arrested so far over January 6th. Long jail sentences for the people who committed violence as opposed to just came into the building and stood around while others committed violence. Here's the question, at least a rational person would ask themselves. Am I willing to give up my life, my family, my career, my whatever assets I've managed to attain so that I can go commit violence on behalf of this man? And indeed, one of the leaders of the Oath Keepers denounced Donald Trump yesterday and said, we went all out for him. And what did he do for us? Gee, I'm just shocked. Donald Trump treats loyalty as a one-way street.
Big surprise there. He always has.
Yeah.
Now they're just catching on. Donald Trump's always been about Donald Trump. No one
ever went broke, Kim, underestimating the stupidity of
American people. I was talking to a former U.S. attorney, David Katz, yesterday on the show, and he was saying that he felt any charges against Trump should have been brought at the federal level, and that state charges against a former president really set a bad precedent. I wonder what your thinking is on that.
Yeah, the underlying argument to what Mr. Cass said is any local prosecutor there are 3,300 counties or what are called county equivalents around the country. Any one of them could start filing charges against the president to harass the president. We have never seen that happen. And if it does, that's where courts can intervene. This is by far not, assuming the charge, remember, we don't know what the grand jury's true bill is going to say. But assuming the indictment is about the hush money to Stormy Daniels, which would be a misdemeanor by itself, and made a felony because of other crimes to cover it up. That's how this law works in New York. Falsify business records, that's the underlying charge, and then cover up or advance the crime doing other crimes, which is going to almost always be the case. Now it's a felony. Michael Cohen went to prison for this. And if Michael Cohen can go to prison for acting as Donald Trump's agent, then I don't see why Donald Trump can't. The more serious charges, without a doubt, are federal charges, particularly over the stolen national security documents, which I'm interpreting a little bit here, but just tiny amount, are believed to have included the names, the identities of American undercover agents and American assets. An American asset would be somebody in the Kremlin who is talking to us sotto voce on the side about what Putin is doing.
Yeah. If
it were to come out in a federal trial that any one of those people was killed or attacked, I think it would be sort of game over for Trump, for everybody who believes it. And the federal charges are the most important, but you don't get a free ride because you're president or we're president, especially if we are going to try and move toward the promise of our society of equal justice under law. And apparently the Atlanta case, Fulton County, from the special grand juror's comments to the Atlantic Journal-Constitution, which, by the way, they're totally free to make. The judge has made it very clear. Georgia law,
gag order.
There's no gag order. They can talk about everything except a handful of items. And they told the Atlanta newspaper, oh man, this is a much more massive case than you have any idea of. That we now know there's more than just the one taped telephone call where Trump threatened Brad Raffensperger, the Republican who was the head of state elections. And
there's more?
There's the mother and the daughter who worked in the election, you may recall, who had death threats, people pounding on the door saying they're going to kill them. But apparently there was more effort than we know about to illegally overturn that election. So I understand the federal prosecutor's point. Glenn Kirshner, when I was on MSNBC a night or two ago, made the same point. And I think that, yes, the big charge is going to be the federal one, but I don't see a reason to give Trump a walk on the crimes he committed in New York. And as I said, we don't know exactly what that grand jury indictment is going to say. It might have a state RICO charge, which is something I've argued for a long time, and what the prosecutors who quit, Mark Pomerantz and Kerry Dunn, were working to bring when Alvin Bragg, the newly elected DA, said, I don't think you got the case. There may be a tax charge. There may be a suborning perjury charge. I'd say there's a pretty good chance of that. And all of this, Kim, means that Trump faces a real tough question. Does he want to invoke his right to a speedy trial? He can go to trial in 2 months. Or does he want to risk that a judge sets the trial next year, which would be likely if he tries to drag it out? And you don't have to attend your own trial as a defendant unless you're in custody. But it would certainly make difficult his running for president if he's facing a trial. And the trials would not occur on the same dates. The judges absolutely would see to it that they don't overlap. The risk for Trump is that if he seeks a speedy trial, which I doubt he will do, he would be running perhaps as a convicted felon. And I always use, that it's collateral and unnecessary, or should be, to say convicted felon. But every time I write felon, I get people who write and say, does that mean he's been convicted? So
really?
Yeah.
That's just the level of charges. That has nothing to do with.
You wouldn't believe how many Americans do not understand how a bill gets through Congress because they slept through junior high school civics. We just saw a Republican congresswoman from central New York, so 60, 80, 100 miles from where I live, give an interview to Newsmax, and she's a former lawyer and a former judge, in which she essentially said, the New York case will be nothing because Trump will refuse to participate. That's not how the criminal justice system works. Doesn't matter. Let's say, bank robbery charge, I'm not going to go to the courthouse. Not the way it works.
No.
How can a former lawyer and judge say that? Well, because there's a whole contingent of people out there who want to hear that.
Yeah. They want to hear that. The Georgia prosecutors, you had just brought up the Georgia case. Apparently, the charges they're considering are racketeering and conspiracy charges in this investigation to overturn the 2020 loss. So, I mean, that doesn't seem like enough to me. Racketeering and conspiracy. I kind of want something else. Well, like election tampering, or like a specific election charge about, you tried to usurp the will of the American people charge. I want something with teeth.
Yeah, I'm not deeply informed on Georgia law.
That's not a charge? No.
I'm very aware of New York State RICO law and the federal law, and I know the former Justice Department official and legal scholar Robert Blakey, who came up with this idea. But actually, a RICO charge makes a great deal of sense. A RICO charge is an enterprise, and an enterprise can be a business, or it can be activities you all took jointly, which appears to be a legitimate political or business action, but in fact, it's a criminal enterprise posing as legitimate. Mm-hmm. And that allows you to bring in a kitchen sink of material, and including the menacing of Brad Raffensperger, where Trump threatened him. He didn't say, I'm going to go break your legs. That's not how Trump operates. He said, I'm going to make your life impossible.
But then all the rest of the Trump, people, supporters, threatened their lives and the lives of their family. There was serious intimidation.
Right. And a RICO charge specifically allows you to pursue those issues, at least New York and federal law. And I'm sure the Georgia law is similarly framed.
What does RICO stand for?
Racketeering, influenced, corrupt organization. It was originally thought of as a way to go after the mafia. I mean, the problem with early prosecutions of the mafia was that all of these guys had businesses, and they would all say, I'm a businessman. Joe Bonanno, the head of one of the five families, in his autobiography, which was a response to Gates Elise's book, Honor Thy Father, that laid out his criminal career. I remember I reviewed this for the LA Times when it came out, and there's a line where he says, "The newspapers, they say that I deal in heroin and other drugs. I've never even seen heroin." In which I wrote, "No doubt true. And the chairman of the board of Exxon doesn't pump gasoline either." and the RICO laws have been successful. In fact, in the most famous RICO case of all, one of the charges involved Donald Trump, one of Donald Trump's apartment buildings in New York on East 61st Street, and mob concrete.
Were RICO charges ever even brought up or considered in this case?
Well, this was in New York. That's what.
No, but I mean in the Trump case.
In that case, he wasn't the person who was pursued. It was the mobsters who were pursued.
I'm talking about what's going on now with the election. How you were talking about RICO charges would be applicable.
Well, in New York, that's what Mark Pomerantz and Kerry Dunn, the very experienced prosecutors. Pomerantz is hands down the authority on RICO in America. There's nobody in his league. That was the case they were trying to bring, and Alvin Bragg, when he became DA, shut it down. Mm-hmm. And Pomerantz, whom I've talked to, and who wrote a book, sort of basically says, I don't think I properly sold and explained to Bragg what we were doing. When I was teaching my class last night, it was on to my law students. It was about tax law. And before I walked into the class, the last thing I thought to myself was, don't start out with a string. Start out with a big umbrella of what you're going to go through, and make sure that they have a solid, this is the ballpark that we are in, to mix metaphors. Whereas Pomerantz sort of thinks that what he did was he just walked up to the plate and hit the ball without explaining the rules of baseball to Bragg. But I to this day believe that a RICO charge against Trump and the Trump organization and his three oldest children and Jared Kushner is absolutely the best way to go. But as again, prosecutors, old saying among prosecutors, you don't bring the case you want to bring, you bring the case you know you will win.
Do you think there will be major protests on the street should he be arrested?
That's going to be the big test, because if there aren't, that tells you that Donald Trump is already shriveled to insignificance.
Crickets.
Over, and over this underlying case called, an affair with Stormy Daniels. According to Stormy Daniels, this affair lasted about 48 seconds. If Donald can't turn out huge crowds, this is not good for him at all. And this is New York City. Donald Trump is reviled in New York City. I mean, he got 30% of the vote or so in Manhattan, but absolutely reviled widely in Manhattan. And one of the reasons he got this free ride in the 2016 election that I started trying to educate my peers about in 2015 was, as one of my former editors of the New York Times said to me, when I said, you guys need to write about Donald's involvement with the cocaine trafficker for whom he did just inexplicable and extraordinary favors unless they were in business together, and other crimes. And he said, David, everybody knows that he's a crook. And I said, no, everybody in Manhattan knows that.
Right.
People in Keokuk, Iowa, and West Texas think he's a business genius, hero of the popular man and woman.
But there were stories after stories about, before he was elected, about him, screwing people out of money. The people performed work, and then he would turn around and say, you know what? I'm not going to pay you for that. I'm going to pay you a fourth of what I agreed to pay you.
I was the person who wrote a lot of those.
I mean, we knew he was a crook. The information was readily available,
but we really didn't. And you go read the New York Times is the news source in America. Every TV producer, every radio news producer, every editor of a regional or local newspaper that has any ambitions gets up in the morning and the first thing they do is read the New York Times. And the Times ran a huge page one scrub, as we call it in the business, of Hillary Clinton. When Barack Obama ran, we scrubbed John McCain and Barack Obama. Was, as some people were claiming, McCain a quisling when he was in the Hanoi Hilton, or was he a hero? Where was Barack Obama born? The New York Times sent a reporter to Indonesia who found his kindergarten playmates and documented that they went to kindergarten together. There was a big scrub of Hillary Clinton. There was no scrub of Donald Trump.
Why?
Look for it. Because this attitude, there's a famous New Yorker magazine cover by Steinberg that's the New York viewpoint of the world. And it starts off somewhere in Manhattan. And as soon as you get to the East River, it says New Jersey, the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Jennifer and I have hanging in our house a parody of that. That's the Los Angeles done the same way.
Yeah.
But there was this view by producers on TV and editors and at many news organizations that we all know who Donald Trump is. Yeah. They didn't appreciate, because these aren't the kind of folks who would watch the Apprentice and the Celebrity Apprentice, who he was. And by the way, anybody who knows business, and I taught at a graduate school of business for 8 years, anybody who knows business watching that show, as I went and watched some of them, would say to themselves, that's not how you run a successful business. He's making the most absurd judgments and saying things that are just, that's not how business works. It doesn't fit any theory of business, of leadership, of management. But why would anybody who's a factory worker, or a police officer have any idea of how business works at the top?
So it's that's all true, and yes, crappy business person, and it turned out that he was a crappy president as well. But I wonder, in this New York case, and we're running out of time. I'm so sorry. There were so many things I wanted to talk to you about, but this is so interesting. This New York case where Cohen went to jail for the whole hush money payment to Stormy Daniels and the cover up of it all. I guess the problem that I've read about is proving that Trump knew what Cohen was doing and intended and basically had the intent to cover all this up, or was it Cohen that did it all and he didn't know?
So that's going to be Trump's defense. Plus, Michael Cohen's a convicted perjurer, so he's a liar. Yeah. The answer to that is prosecutors put convicted murderers, co-conspirators, people have been convicted of serious charges involving selling our secrets to foreign governments on the witness stand all the time and get convictions. And in this case, you'd have to ask yourself, why would Michael Cohen go and take a loan on his own account to pay for Donald Trump? What would prompt you to do that? Secondly, they've got Alan Weiselberg, who directed the money, and Jeff Coney, who was called to the grand jury, so won't be charged, who was right under Weiselberg, who've testified about this. And so I don't think they're going to have any trouble showing that Donald Trump directed the payoff. They may get some success with some jurors by saying, well, this wasn't a violation of election laws of the state and federal government. This was an effort to hide this from his wife, Melania. If she is so naive that she thinks she had a faithful husband, I'm a girl. Right. Cohen's testimony can be supported by documents that they have and testimony from other parties. I think this is a real serious problem for Donald Trump. But if he were to get a hung jury, he's going to proclaim, see, I was innocent. If he gets convicted, well, this is the corrupt deep state, George Soros backed, all those jurors were paid to make this decision. I mean, he'll make all sorts of outrageous charges, none of which will do him any good when it comes to sentencing. Because one of the things judges pay attention to at sentencing is, are you contrite? And if you're actually innocent,
he'll never be contrite.
If you're actually innocent and say, I didn't kill my wife, I don't know who did, you guys don't believe me, but I didn't do it. That's one thing. But if you get up and say, yeah, you're not legitimate.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not smart at all.
It's not a good look. Yeah. But you can almost see that that's what he will do, because that's how he handled election losses, right? If I win, it shows everything's fine. Right. If I lose, it shows everything's broken. It's all about what I want to happen. If I win this case, it shows I was innocent all along. If I lose, it shows the American justice system is corrupt and all you people are the worst in the world. So it's
a relatively small minority of the population who buy this. And remember, the Republicans are a minority party who, as a share of the population, have been shrinking for some time. And it's within the Republican Party, Trump is basically supported by a minority of Republicans. He always is pointing to the Rasmussen poll, which is the least reliable political poll around. But he's not doing well. And so for Trump, there are three things, Kim, you're likely to see happen going forward. Donald Trump gets the Republican nomination because a lot of people run and he's able to pick them off one by one, as he did in 2016. Then you go to the general election, he will lose by a landslide in the popular vote. He might still get an electoral college win, especially with help from the Russians, the North Koreans, and the Saudis. Second, he is denied the Republican nomination, in which case he'll run as an independent. That will peel off enough Republican votes, even if he only got 3% of the votes, that the Democrats win. The third scenario is he realizes there'll be a humiliating defeat. And so he tells his voters, the whole system's corrupt, don't vote, which assures the Democrats will win. I mean,
no matter how we cut it, we're doing okay.
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats, who have a long history of snatching victory from, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory,
right,
can mess this up. But if they keep their powder dry, pay attention, behave reasonably, and keep pointing to 12 million jobs in 2 years when Trump created roughly 6 million in 3, because I'm not going to count the pandemic against him, even though you could reasonably do that. I mean, Trump had a slower job growth additions than Obama once the Great Recession ended. He was 3% below Trump, and then we've seen this continuing great growth under Biden of jobs and wages rising, which is what the Fed's trying to stop with increased interest rates. So Donald, a whole bunch of tough questions for him. When do you go to trial? Even if he's convicted, he can run for president. Eugene V. Debs ran for president on the socialist ticket in 1920. He was in federal prison in Atlanta because he'd been convicted of sedition during World War I. He got 900,000 votes, or 3.4% of the total. The winner of that election, Calvin Coolidge, commuted his sentence shortly after taking office, by the way. So.
Sedition, that's a charge I'm looking for. Sedition. Yeah.
I hope, but don't.
David Cay Johnston, you are amazing and awesome. I am so grateful to you for coming on the show, even though Mark's not here. dcreports.org. You've got some great articles up there. Report was singular. dcreport.org. Got to get the facts straight. You can check it out. You've got a great article about some information to come out of the Reagan era that we may not have known before, which was a fascinating report.
I think we all sort of figured it had to be true, but we now have the smoking gun proof.
Oh. Well, we will see you hopefully back here next week. I look forward to it. Thank you for the great conversation.
Bye, Kim.
Bye. David Cay Johnston, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being here as well. We've got a great show lined up because you may remember one of my former colleagues from Station X, Jason Middleton. He is going to be on the show. We've got Johnny Steele, comedian, lined up to be on the show in the 11 o'clock hour, and little tastes of Mark Thompson, that sounds yucky, coming in as well. But right now I want to do some news right before we get to Jason Middleton. I'm Kim McAllister on the Mark Thompson Show, and we will start with the very story we were just talking to David Cay Johnston about, and that is the potential arrest of former President Trump. And that is what he was saying, but it's looking like former President Trump will not face a possible indictment today. The New York City grand jury hearing his alleged hush money payment case involving adult film actress Stormy Daniels is expected to reconvene tomorrow. Reports say the Democratic Manhattan DA appears ready to elevate the false paperwork case from a misdemeanor to a felony now. It centers around alleged payments to Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, made to Stormy Daniels in 2016 to cover up an alleged affair. On social media over the weekend, the former president claimed he would be arrested Tuesday and called for protests. Again, it doesn't look like today is the day for that arrest. Janet Yellen, a Treasury Secretary, says failing to raise the nation's debt limit would be absolutely catastrophic. While speaking at the American Bankers Association Summit in Washington, D.C., Yellen urged Congress to raise the debt ceiling promptly without any conditions attached. She says when Congress waited until the last minute to do so in 2011, the U.S. credit rating was downgraded. Her remarks come as the Biden administration and Republicans appear to be at odds on a deal. House Republicans have demanded deep spending cuts in return for their votes. The U.S. is looking to get tanks to Ukraine as faster as it fights back against Russia's invasion. That's according to National Security Council spokesman John Kirby. He said changes to the process are the way to speed up the delivery of Abrams tanks. He said the Pentagon is working as quickly as possible. The quote out of Miami, "We do not embrace the spring break atmosphere." What? Isn't that where you go for spring break? Nope. Mayor of Miami Beach said on CNN there were 2 deadly shootings there in recent days. Dan Gelber says there are so many people in that area, it is hard to control them. This despite Gelber saying the city bringing in a bunch of police officers. The city commission held a special meeting yesterday. They rejected an additional curfew. They're trying to add a curfew, get these people inside at night, but no. It did agree, though, to have local liquor stores restrict the sale of alcohol starting at 6 p.m. Happy spring break to you. One reason for not issuing another curfew is this weekend's Ultra Music Festival, at which the last set begins at 11 p.m. There's a growing number of Americans that believe the United States is the leading economic power in the world. A new Gallup poll shows 44% of respondents say America has the top economy, compared to 42% who said it's China. That's an increase from the 37% in 2021 who said the U.S. takes the top spot. Google stepping into the artificial intelligence world with a new chatbot. It is called Bard, and here's the Google Bard logo. Not everybody, though, will be able to use Bard right away because only a limited number of users in the US and Britain will have access to it right now before it eventually expands. Bard is entering the marketplace after other products from companies like OpenAI have made a splash. So we'll see how Google Bard does. And here's something I'm sure Jason Middleton can commiserate with me on. It is, kind of looks familiar. It is National Teenager Day. Yes, it is National Teenager Day. A teen, of course, defined as anyone between the ages of 13 and 19. The day is meant for teens to be honored, for us to tell them how much they are appreciated.
There's never been anything like this.
To which the teens will say, whatever. Yeah, we got it. Don't talk to me, don't touch me, and leave me alone. This report on the Mark Thompson Show could be sponsored by you. We are looking for sponsors, and we would love to have you aboard. You can email us at themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. You can check in with us, and we'll talk a little bit about it. We would love to have you on board. The show, by the way, is also crowdfunded. So whatever you can do, if that's YouTube, we've got Patreon, we've got PayPal, themarkthompsonshow.com.
Iron rod.
Yes, and click the like button because we love to have your support there as well. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
I've told you it's never easy being in this business.
The Mark Thompson Show.
What up, everybody? A quick check of Mark's madness. Oh, it's a lot of madness.
Yeah.
A little Mark today. Kim, thank you so much for being here and for making stuff happen, because I can't be here today in person live.
What?
But I know. I am without peer when it comes to my enthusiasm for Mark's Madness.
I can't believe it. Mark's Madness.
You gotta have. This is a tough one to call, Albert. Even you in the commissioner's office of Mark's Madness have to say, tough to call it. It's either going to be,
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
or it's going to be,
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
a vote for either lunch
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol
or
involved.
wild idea.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Yeah, you can vote right now and until midnight tonight. Yeah, the voting continues till midnight in the community section of our YouTube channel. Of course, you can vote live right now during this hour in the YouTube poll and also in the chat. But as we say, we keep the voting open. The poll.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Oh, Kim, you're muted.
Okay, I think I fixed it.
Yeah, we're
Stop.
good. We're good now. I cut that
so-
video. Usually we got into more of that video, and we do have an esteemed guest. One of our former colleagues here is waiting in the green room. So we'll keep it short. We're running a little late. So
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and we'll get to him. But there are a million ways to introduce this guy, but I will just say he is the best business reporter I've ever worked with. With no further ado, former KGO business and tech reporter, now a reporter for KFI. It is Jason Middleton, everybody.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, I haven't seen you in forever, and I miss you so.
I miss you as well. I love the show. Thanks for having me on too. That was a hell of an intro too. I loved working with you too. So it's good to see you again.
Boy, those days. You got out well before the final implosion. So kudos to you.
Yeah, there was. I think that I don't know. One time they did let us go during our show,
right?
And then they brought some of us back, and then I was gone by the time the next wave of what the hell just happened.
Right. Yes. But now you're in Los Angeles.
Yes, back in LA after 12 years up there with you.
Are you doing a business reporting at KFI or general reporting, or what's it like?
I'm anchoring, and I have my own show. On Sundays at 2:00. It's an hour for now. Hopefully we'll move to 2 hours in the coming months. We'll see how it goes. It's called Macro, and it's basically what you and I are about to talk about. It's just macroeconomic takes on what happened in the week past, what's coming up in the week to come.
You are so good at that. So let's jump right into it because, before we do that, I just wanted to wish you a happy National Teenager Day.
Thank you so much. I feel seen.
You know how it is. I think we have daughters the same age, right?
That's right. They're both 13, right?
Yeah, going into high school. Here comes the trouble times.
This morning on the drive to school, I was able to convince her to let me play a song.
Oh.
And actually she didn't jump out of the car while it was moving. So I took that as a win.
Okay, I think that is a win.
Day,
absolutely. Let's talk about this implosion of banks. Speaking of implosions, we got Silicon Valley Bank that it had trouble. First Republic Bank based in San Francisco. And then there's a news story today about Credit Suisse. But let's start with Silicon Valley Bank and what you think happened there.
Okay. It was a kind of a conflagration of things in a lot of ways. Now, it's not necessarily what they call a black swan. Black swans are unpredictable. This one was a little bit predictable. There are a couple of trade rags that I follow that kind of pointed out that they were in the wrong position with a lot of their assets. In a nutshell, they were exposed to things that were not going to give them enough money back for their investors at the same time, and they were overexposed. 50%, 50.2%, half of all startups in this country went through Silicon Valley Bank. That's an overexposure to one market, right? Mm-hmm. So if one thing happens there, then you get that ripple effect that we're seeing that's now started with Silicon Valley Bank, and it's going, like you said, Credit Suisse, it's going global. So the crisis of confidence is there. Now, this is not a financial crisis like we had in 2008, by the way, okay? If you're a depositor, you're fine. If you're an investor, you're probably looking at your books and saying, okay, what is my bank doing with with its inventory, with its investments? Like, how is it funding itself? Because if we go really macro here, Kim, and I hate to do that, but it's true. If you think about it, banking is kind of a miracle, right? Because banks don't have all the money that's that's deposited in them, right? But they lend out more than they actually have. So that's what the economy is built on. And so it's kind of like deficit spending deficit spending is okay if you're generating jobs and you're growing the economy at a greater rate than the interest you're paying on that debt, right? So that's what happened with Silicon Bank. They were getting the interest rate back, and that was not high enough because the Fed has been cranking rates so high. So then they came out and basically had a 13-year-old, National Teenager Day. They had a 13-year-old write their press release and says, hey, don't everybody freak out at once, but we're going to be fine. We just need $2.5 billion in liquidity to keep the bank running. And that's when Peter Thiel and Jason Calacanis and some other VCs took to Twitter and said, get your money out now. And that
they said, what? Exactly.
Yeah. They that pretty much triggered the run.
What?
And we could go back into it. What? I know you want to talk about First Republic, and I do too, but I hope I answered your question.
No, yeah, absolutely. So then we have what looks to be a ripple effect, and we've got First Republic Bank in San Francisco, and not necessarily a run on the bank, but some shaky times, some stock plummeting, some trouble for them. Yeah.
Oh yeah. The share prices have just been, it's not been fun to watch. It's like a balloon that's been shot out of the sky, a surveillance balloon that's coming back to the ocean level. Remember though, and I'm not dancing on a grave here, but it's important to remember that in 2008, First Republic was the poster child of the financial crisis. Okay. They are not a regional bank. Silicon Valley Bank is a regional bank. Pacific Premier Bank is another example of a regional bank. Those banks have assets between 10 and $100 billion. First Republic is a wealth management and commercial bank. So it's for the wealthier individuals.
It's kind of a niche market, right?
It is a niche market, but it's not a regional bank market. Like Silicon Valley Bank was a niche bank too, because look, let's go back to Silicon Valley Bank for a second. You come to me and I'm JP Morgan and you say, I have an idea for a company, but I'm going to need $10 million a month for 2 years and I'm not going to make any revenue. JP Morgan Chase is going to be like, thanks for coming in. There's some mints on the table on your way out.
Yeah.
But if you go to Silicon Valley Bank, they understood that kind of a business model, right? So that's where the niche was for them.
Sure.
It's no longer there. Yeah. With First Republic, the niche is rich individuals, wealth management, customized banking solutions, that kind of thing too. So I think that's not, you're right. It's not a run on that bank. There's a crisis of confidence within the whole banking sector. Yeah. I think there's an opportunity here. You mentioned that First Republic is headquartered in San Francisco. I mentioned that back in 2008, it wasn't exactly a stellar corporate citizen. Neither was Wells Fargo, which is also banked and headquartered in San Francisco.
What's going on in the big city? Yeah.
I think Wells Fargo has a chance to take itself off the bad boy list and move itself into a good citizen list by helping out First Republic. And this is a complete conjecture and analysis on my part, but this would be not just good PR, it would help both banks at the same time. And it would help shore up a little bit of the confidence in the Valley.
Okay. But this isn't just a San Francisco thing. And maybe, hopefully Wells Fargo is listening to you, because that'd be awesome. But this is now international, because and I think it's another niche bank, Credit Suisse, right?
Yes. And again, another bad boy bank that got into too much trouble. Theirs was a little bit different because the ECB, the European Union, and the European Central Bank has a little bit of a different regulatory system than we do. But nonetheless, it really is oranges to oranges when it comes to a little bit of mismanagement, Silicon Valley Bank mismanagement and whatnot. Yeah.
So here's the headline out of Fortune.com. Credit Suisse's $17 billion of risky bonds now worthless after takeover by UBS. Those bonds were created for moments like this. What does that mean? How can you explain that to me?
Sure. Yeah. So back in 2008, banks, like I said, banks lend out more than they have.
Right.
So what they do is they buy things that they think they're going to get a return on. And sometimes back in 2008, that was mortgaged backed assets, right? But those mortgages were trash. They were garbage. And those were bundled. That's why this is different than then. Now, having said that, Credit Suisse may have been overexposed in the kind of junky kind of bond market. And look, I'm sorry to hear. I mean, I know that UBS bought Credit Suisse over the weekend, Sunday, right before my show went on. They bought it for $3.2 billion. That was talk about pennies on a dollar, right? And then so you have that, but the $17 billion that's been wiped out in assets, I mean, that's kind of the nature of investing. And I think you have to show, I think governments and regulators have to show that, yeah, you can lose money. It's not called free moneyism. It's called capitalism, right? So you are going into a risk anytime you take an investment, and $17 billion in debt. And it's not a small chunk of change for sure, but how you manage your risk and how you manage your investments is just as important as how much money you put into them.
You know, what's funny is I think my phone is listening to me because I just got a text. It says, Wells Fargo card has been used at Amazon.com for $866.
Whoa.
To stop, visit this link. The link is rebrand something, nothing to do with Wells Fargo. I am not a Wells Fargo customer. So what's interesting about that is I think it heard you say Wells Fargo, and it's like, the scammers are listening, Jason.
Yeah. Wow. That's not, unless you were buying some patio furniture and your husband doesn't know about it and you just don't want to know anybody to know about it. That's, I'm sorry I exposed your $866 expenditure, Kim. My bad.
No, I don't even have Wells Fargo. So I don't know.
I know.
Yeah. Okay.
What he's got going here is a situation.
Yes.
So let's switch from banking to businesses. After the pandemic, the way we're doing business changing. People are doing this hybrid work from home thing. A lot of layoffs in the tech sector.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if this is going on around the country to the degree it is in San Francisco, but businesses are now leaving the downtown area and they're checking out. Some have smaller offices in the city. In other areas, some are saying we don't really need this big office space. Even Salesforce has decided it doesn't need some floors on its giant office tower.
Yeah.
And the latest is Reddit. They're giving up their San Francisco, south of Market or financial district office building. And what you have is all these businesses around those areas that were built on the workers coming to San Francisco are faltering and they're not going to be able to survive. Is this a phenomenon we're seeing everywhere?
Yeah, commercial real estate for sure is in contraction mode, for sure. You see it in San Francisco first, largely because of the layoffs you mentioned there too. And those layoffs, I want to circle back on that because I'm really glad you brought that up, because there's some math we can throw there. I know that math on the radio doesn't always work, but I think math on YouTube might work.
I think so. We're good.
I think
you have your whiteboard. Are you ready to go?
We'll push through. I just got something from The Economist about Wells Fargo. That's weird. Okay, so anyway.
That is weird. I'm telling you, our phones are listening to us.
I know.
I believe it.
And if it's coming from The Economist, anyway. So, so the commercial real estate is definitely in contraction. I can say that here in Los Angeles, our station, our heart hub is right next to Disney's hub in Burbank. And so they are also getting rid of a floor of their commercial real estate. I know we are pulling our square footage, tighten it up a little bit. We're going to have a lot of shared spaces. I know the fellow anchors of mine and some other reporters are going to be, shifting in and out. So that's going to be rippling for another while because we don't know how long those leases are that people have signed. Right. So of course, unless you're Twitter, and then that dumpster fire, they just didn't pay their bills around.
No, they're like, we're done paying.
Yeah, they just quit paying, and Elon's doing Elon. So yes, first question, commercial real estate, definitely contraction. It's going to take a while to play out though, because some of these leases are sometimes 2 to 5 years. So at the end of those, people are looking to buy out. They might just try to break it. There could be a lot of legal action around that too. To the point about the layoffs though, tech companies specifically during the pandemic and during the lockdown added a lot of weight around the middle management and a lot of other hiring, right? And so laying people off is a feature, not a bug right now. And it's kind of like the business model for this year is going to be firing people. It's not going to be AI. It's not going to be opening up new pop-ups. It's not going to be rolling out new products. It's going to be trimming headcount, because a lot of the bigger tech companies operate at a 40% margin. Okay. So that's pretty good, right? Like I know, like if you sell an app off of the App Store on Apple, they take 40% cut. That gives you an idea of like, that's a pretty decent cut. Okay. Yeah. So in order per share, if you want to give the shareholders value, which legally as a corporation that's publicly traded, you have to do, in order to give that back, you can either at that level at 40% operation margin, you either have to gin up $2.50 per share of revenue, or you lose $1 per share on your operational costs. it's easier just to fire people and lay off people in order to add that. If you look at Meta, the layoffs they have and the layoffs they have planned will double the market cap of that company since November, and they haven't rolled out anything new. So they're not the only company of this size that's doing it. All of them are, except for Apple. Apple is the only one you'll notice, and I'm sure you have, that they have not had to announce tens of thousands of layoffs. It's just
Why is that?
not there. My analytical take on it is management. It's just better management at those companies. Apple, Tim Cook is really, really, really good at what he does. And you get to a certain market cap and you get a company of 400 billion and above, that has its own gravity to it, right? It's like its own constellation. Then you start looking, if as an investor, you look at management. There's not anyone better that does it than Tim Cook. And I think that's why the planning is playing out the way it is. Now, that they also could have probably expanded. So there's an opportunity cost. They could have taken some chances during the pandemic and didn't. Amazon did. Meta did. And now
Amazon is the latest to announce layoffs. Amazon, Google, even with layoffs. And I guess what you're saying makes sense, because I was thinking, you have a company like Google that has bucks. I mean, this company is flush with cash, right? A company like Amazon making money hand over fist during the pandemic. So why then, if they were doing so well financially, would they turn around and lay people off now?
Because like I said, they don't know how to grow their top line right now. So the easier way to do it is to shrink the costs. Right. And to your point, honestly, you're right about they have buckets of dry powder, buckets of cash, cash just sitting around. So does Silicon Valley Bank. All of those VCs and investors had $250 billion in their own portfolios. They could have saved that bank. They chose not to. So I want to circle back on that for a second. But as far as your point about it, the layoffs are going to keep coming, and they're going to keep coming. We're trimming fat off of that. We're going to start cutting into muscle eventually. And then once these companies start to hit some bone with these cuts, then they'll stop. But until then, they're going to see how sleek they can get.
I was talking to Robert Scoble yesterday on the show.
Yeah, I know Robert.
He was talking about all the layoffs as well. And he said something interesting regarding the layoffs and AI, that now AI is able to write code. And so what you'll have is all these laid off creative tech types coming, around, and you're going to see a lot of innovation, probably in a lot of new apps, a lot of new things, because people will be doing things on their own, maybe using AI. So we may be coming into a new time of development and ideas.
I totally agree with you and Robert on that, because I've talked about on my show since we started it. It's I think our 8th show is coming up this week, and so it hasn't been very long, but this has been top of mind for us as well. And it's because I wasn't going to report on too much AI until I started seeing some business models around it when revenue generation comes. But just this week, I have a couple that I think that we're going to talk about. And to Robert's point about AI being able to do that, this is up there with industrial revolution kind of stuff. This is up there with like steam engines and transatlantic railroads or transcontinental railroads. It's going to be that important. How it plays out, we still don't really know necessarily. But I do think. I think that there's a lot of upside. There's a lot of scary stuff too. Some of it's really stupid. Some of it's really scary. And some of it's really cool. So we're going to hopefully be able to empower the cool stuff that comes out of it and the ethical stuff that should come out of it, and not necessarily the black hat kind of stuff.
I want to squeeze in one more question, and it's not some. I didn't tell you I was going to ask you about this, but last night I'm watching a really stupid movie on Freevee TV.
Yeah. I just added it this weekend.
You have to watch. You have to sit through the commercials. You can't fast forward. But they have some mindless movies on there where I'm folding laundry and I'm not paying close attention, so it's fine. So I'm forced to watch this commercial, and it's a Google commercial, and it's about Google has a new password protector or password management app that they're about ready to put forth. I'm not sure if you've heard about this, but it's along the lines of I don't know, one of those companies that they maintain all your passwords for you, and they kind of they encrypt everything, and so you don't have to ever worry about it getting cracked or what have you. But I wondered, if I have Gmail and Google Docs and everything Google, do I want Google to also be the manager of my passwords? Or is it a system where like maybe they don't know what the password is? Is it, not knowledge based on their part? I wonder, what do you think about that system?
I can't answer that one specifically because I haven't tried it, but I can say it's probably not just two-factor authentication. It's probably double blind, right? It's probably double blind on their side too. It's kind of like WhatsApp, right? It's all encrypted as it passes from user to user. So that's probably what they would do, because I think Google is smart enough that they're not going to ask for. I don't know what standards and practices are. They're not looking for a show of the number 2 variety to come into their if they don't do this right. So they're going to get it right. But yeah, I mean, honestly, when it comes to this, one of the reasons people stick to Apple is because it's a walled garden and because of the blue bubbles on the texting, right? And so this might be an opportunity for Google to kind of like maybe just ding that market a little bit for its Pixel phones and other pieces of its hardware. To that point, during your break, you were doing your news updates. I just recently, right when I was ready to go on with you, I got my invitation to do Bard.
Oh,
so
okay.
I can report back on that if you ever want to talk about that. So
I want to have you back on the show because Jason Middleton, I adore you. Your brain is big, and I love it.
That's Kim.
I love it, and I miss working with you, and it's so good to see your face.
It is good to see your face too, and best to your teenage daughter. And I will pass along that I'll have to remind my 2 nieces who live less than a mile away and my daughter that they have to be nice to me on Teenager Day. That's the way I think we should sell it. It's National Teenager Day. You have to be nice to your parents for a day.
I'm on board. I'm gonna do that as well. That's perfect. Jason Middleton, I'm going to hassle you mercilessly to get you back on the show. So thank you for being here.
Anytime.
I really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely, Kim. Thank you so much. And great show. I'll be watching.
Thank you. Bye, Jason.
Bye-bye.
So nice. I so appreciate him coming on the show. Thank you for being here, everybody. Let's do a little news and then we'll do a little more Mark, if you know what I'm saying.
In that Mark video, so we anticipated. So usually on Tuesdays, David Cay Johnston is on at 11. So obviously Mark isn't live with us here. So we pre-recorded this expecting that. So we kind of tossed it to David Cay Johnston. We already had him on, but just bear with us. Okay.
Okay. Oh, okay. Because yes, I understand. Are we doing news? What are we doing? Here it comes. That's right. I'm Kim McAllister on the Mark Thompson Show with a little bit of news. If you would like to be a sponsor of this newscast or of the Mark Thompson Show, you can email us at themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. Adult film actress Stormy Daniels says she will dance down the street when the former president goes to jail. She made that claim on Twitter in response to a user who said she accepted money to frame Donald Trump. The Manhattan DA appears to be close to deciding whether to indict Trump in connection with a $130,000 payment to Daniels right before the 2016 election to cover up an alleged affair. The New York City grand jury hearing the alleged hush money payment case is expected to reconvene tomorrow. The United States is speeding up the delivery of key air defense systems of tanks to Ukraine as Russia's invasion of the country continues. And officials have now planned to send older models of the Abrams tank to Ukraine to get these vehicles on the ground before the end of the year. So a little more information on this story. The United States still intends to send more modern versions of the tanks as well, which will take more time. Patriot missile defense systems are also expected to be deployed faster than originally planned. Ukrainian soldiers will complete their training on the systems in Oklahoma in the coming days. President Biden taking action at this hour to protect more than 500,000 acres of public lands. He is establishing 2 national monuments, one in Nevada, the other in Texas. Y'all can go to hell. I'm going back to Texas. They are designed to protect Kastner Range in El Paso and sacred tribal site Avi Kivame in southern Nevada. The administration will also consider an initiative to protect all U.S. waters around Pacific remote islands. The efforts are part of the president's goal of conserving at least 30% of ocean waters under American jurisdiction by 2030. Interesting, the juxtaposition between that protection of those 2 monuments and the waters along the Pacific remote islands, and then the okaying of the Willow Project in Alaska. And I wonder if this wasn't time to kind of counteract that. The family of Irvo Otenyo will speak later today after video of what eventually led to his death was released in Virginia. High-profile attorney Ben Crump will join the family. Otenio's death happened earlier this month near Richmond. Security footage from Central State Hospital has been released. It shows Otenio handcuffed and shackled as he is in an admissions area of the hospital. A white sheet was then put over his body. Nearly an hour and a half later, hospital workers tended to him during that time, and eventually it led to emergency responders arriving. 7 Henrico County deputies and 3 Central State Hospital employees are now accused of second-degree murder in that case. There is a federal judge granting a class action status to a lawsuit accusing General Motors of knowingly selling cars with faulty transmissions. Would they do that? There are 39 plaintiffs in 26 states now who have sued GM. U.S. District Judge for the Eastern District of Michigan granting the class action certification. The lawsuit claims GM vehicles with 8-speed automatic transmissions made between 2015 and 2019 lurch and shudder while driving. No lurching and shuddering. New findings suggest life on Earth may originate from extraterrestrial sources. The aliens are here and we are them. Scientists in Japan point to an analysis of samples collected from an asteroid in 2020. More than 20 types of amino acids, which are the building blocks of life, were collected from an asteroid about 180 million miles away from Earth. Researchers say the findings increase the possibility that water and other organisms had their origin in space.
That's not fake. That's real.
And we'll end it on a sad note, unfortunately. There is an actor known for his work in the Star Wars and Harry Potter's franchise who has died. This is Paul Grant. He died after he was found he had collapsed outside King's Cross Station in London last week. His daughter confirmed his death to Sky News, said no girl deserves their dad to be taken away. Grant played an Ewok in Star Wars Return of the Jedi and a goblin in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. He was 56 years old. This report is crowdfunded, like the Mark Thompson Show. So if you would like to kick in, we would love to have your support.
It with your iron rod.
You can smash it with your iron rod and click that like button. You can donate here on YouTube. You can contribute on Patreon and contribute on PayPal. TheMarkThompsonShow.com, the way to do it. And we appreciate anything that you can give. And if you can just give us your time, we're grateful to have you along for the ride as well. I'm Kim McAllister, and this is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Excited to join for just a brief second to let you know of who's shake. What am I trying to?
Uh-oh, Kim. I'll be right back with the video, okay?
Thompson, no bueno. Yeah, he just kind of shuddered to a stop right there. We've got Johnny Steele coming up. We've got a little Mark Thompson when we get the right video together over here. We'll talk to Johnny Steele because he's got some great comedy shows coming up. Oh, did we get Mark Thompson?
I think I got it back.
Okay, let's roll it. Let's roll.
Madness. I don't want to keep David Cay Johnston waiting too long, so I'll just tell you, this is a pretty good one. It's either...
It's about as bad as it can possibly get.
Yes, Simon, or...
What?
Yeah, oh, that's going to be tough to beat. It's either Simon's...
It's about as bad as it can possibly get.
Or it's Oprah's...
What?
Yeah, one or the other. You vote now on YouTube and until midnight tonight in the community section of our YouTube channel. Good luck! Now back to Kim and the great David Cay Johnston.
So again, that was a recording of Mark Thompson and all things Mark's Madness. We have already spoken with David Cay Johnston at the beginning of the show. Next up, we've got Johnny Steele coming up. But Albert, do you want to do a little check-in on Mark's Madness before we do that?
Yes, here I'm going to just add it to the chat. We have quite the results here. It's looking like it's very one-sided.
Okay.
Leaning
gotta
towards
go with
wild idea. So I'm willing to bet my lunch that one gets to move on.
Okay. A wild idea, but it just might work. All right.
Just might work. Yep.
Okay. I like it. And then this hour we're doing what versus what was that?
Let me pull that up again. Sorry.
I like what. I mean, no matter what, it's what's going to win it.
What I have rumors are that what will make it pretty far, and here it's What and Simon as bad as it could possibly get,
That's
which was
right.
an old one.
Yeah.
Those of you old Station X listeners used to know I used to play my own music, play the music that I like, which includes some K-pop is in there, and Mark used to just pound me with the Simon Cowell drop. So it's a little oldie but goodie, but yep.
All right, so you can vote in the YouTube chat. You can also vote until midnight on the in the community section of YouTube. So thank you for participating and having fun with us on that. But right now, I want to bring in an old friend and a really amazing person. It's Johnny Steele, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm here all week. How you doing?
Hi. Look at you, all cool with your guitar on the wall. Telling you.
Yeah, I start my days like thinking I'm going to buckle down and do some writing and pick up some gigs and maybe work on my CD. And then I walk the dog, have some breakfast, play one of my 12 guitars. And then all of a sudden it's do a radio show, TV show, podcast show. And then a friend calls and says, hey, I'm passing through town. You want to have lunch? Yeah, go to lunch for like half hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, come home. All right, I'm going to buckle down and get some stuff done. Hey, Johnny, we're going hiking up in Tilden Park. You want to go? Yeah, so that's
I want your life.
I know. I want your life. I want I want to be motivated and have a deadline and a goal. Like my biggest problem is I just don't really have any deadlines. You know, I got into this comedy thing where the phone would ring and someone would say, you want a gig, next week, next month, tonight, whenever. Yeah, you'd take it, you'd go, you'd make the funny, you get the check, and you go home. And that's how it kind of worked out for years. And I don't know. I never mastered those skills that are kind of important. That's probably why I never did so well in LA. It just, it was a little more regimented and all that. Whereas the comedy life that I did for 30 years was different. It was you had responsibilities, obviously, when there's 350 people at the Improv in Chicago.
You got to be prepared. You got to have your stuff together.
You gotta get up there and do it. But that was 8, 10, 11 o'clock at night. It wasn't, I don't know. So when it comes to doing things like finishing your taxes and working on your CD and working on your comedy tips book, this always gets in the way. So it's something.
What's funny is you mentioned having a deadline, and I think that's one of the reasons reporting worked for me. Because if I don't have a deadline, I'll never get anything done. And I was that reporter always who the producers are looking at me like, is she going to get it done? And I would write a deadline, kind of skid in sideways with fire under my heels and get it in under the wire, but it would be done. And so if I don't have that, that moment where, okay, it has to be done absolutely by X time, then I'll find ways to procrastinate as well. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. I think it's an externally imposed deadline that works best. I was at the Throckmorton Theater in Mill Valley last week. I got it. The show's at 8. I got to be there at what time the show we have, 7:30 or 8. And I got to be there at time, and I got to get the list of the comics that I'm I'm the host for the night. So when it's an externally imposed thing, they're very concrete. When it's just like, hey, I should work on that book today. This is what I found though, is when you have a job, Friday is the greatest day because it's like, the weekend. When you're self-employed, Friday is the worst day because you're like, how is it possibly Friday and I've gotten crap all
nothing done. So you've got that guitar in your hand. Are you going to play something for me?
Oh, it's not plugged in, but I can grab an acoustic probably. I've got somewhere.
We like a little music on the Mark Thompson show. So, it must be done, my friend.
So let's do Kim McAllister used to work in Sacramento, and one night, strangely, I saw her in the emergency room at the hospital. I don't know. That's kind of what I do.
Beautiful.
And I broke a bunch of bones, and she said, "Get on." Call the people at Live 105 where I used to work and call them on the telephone and tell them you ain't coming in tomorrow. That's what I do all day. And my friends come over and go, that stuff is hilarious. You make up stuff so quickly. You're such a good ad lib. Why are you going to cut a CD of like short songs? And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna.
Right after I write my book.
Yeah. Want to go to the gym and spar for a few minutes in the boxing? Sure. So that's one of the things well, you'll love this. When the pandemic started, I thought, this is horrible. I'm sorry for what's going to happen to the world. I'm sorry for the 4 people that are going to become ill or lose their lives. But this is a sign from some external space creature that Johnny now doesn't have gigs, and he's going to have a year to like convert that back bedroom into an office and go in there. When this pandemic ends, he's going to have a new CD, a podcast, his book on comedy tips will be done.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden one day I hear on the news, scientists have created a vaccine and everybody should be, no, not yet. Wait.
You didn't get it done even during the pandemic. No.
I'm sorry, people must continue to die. I haven't completed my tasks yet during this imposed sabbatical. Totally true. And then like it's what, a year after almost everyone's vaccinated, I'm still here. Like, what are we, 3 months in? And I'm like, I just got my website up, which went, and only one page. It's like, don't start big. Let's get the first page up. And I don't know. I don't know if it's concussions.
Your website, by the way, is johnnysteele.com.
Yeah, so my finally I had a flurry of bookings started. All of a sudden things sort of started getting back to normal, and everybody was like, people are telling me they can't find the gig on your website, and I'm like, that's because my website's down, because it costs hundreds of dollars a year to keep up and to have my guy manage it. So when COVID happened, I thought, well, until I get something going, we'll not worry about it. And then it had no gigs on it, which looked bad. So I thought, let's pull it down, and I'll put it up during that sabbatical I'll be taking.
But you're back into gigs, right? You're back. You're doing that again.
Yeah, they're coming. I had this plan that I was going to, there have been entertainers from Steely Dan to, even comedians who stayed at home more and produced. Nowadays, I can go into my back office, come up with a bit, voice it, not even with an audience, send it to my friend who does Foley sound effects on film. He could add laughter and ambient noises, and I could come up with a 2.5-minute decent comedy bit. I mean, I've done this for 35 years. I know how to do it. Close my eyes, pretend I'm in a room, 3, 2, 1, boom. Ever driving down the road? I can do it.
Yeah.
And so, so I had this idea I was going to go from like 90% live outdoor gigs and like 10 or 15%, merchandise or CDs or whatever online. I was going to try and flip that and do like 80% at home. So I started to do that. It's just, as one might know, it's hard to monetize that. When someone invites you to their venue for a gig, they say, hey, I have some money items for you to take home with you. Whereas when you produce your own stuff, costs money to produce them and put them up. So I kind of, for a while, was focusing on that and didn't get gigs. And all of a sudden, late last year, I was like, hey, perhaps some of that cash flow would be a good idea. So yeah, I produced a little year-end Kiss Off because I used to do one with Will Durst, but he's been under the weather for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that big fat year-end Kiss Off went on for, I think, 25, 30 years. We did that maybe. And so that's been down for a couple of years. So I produced a little year-end with my friend Michael Mean and very talented Jeff Bolt out of Marin. And we did a few nights. And and then January and February were just a flurry of gigs. And then it slowed down in March, and I realized that when I was younger and comedy was king, and before the pandemic, I really didn't have to chase work. I was one of the lucky comics who, back in the early days, I was with the Improv, and they would call in October, and their only rule was I had to have my whole coming year open for them. And they had like 10 or 12 rooms, and they would give me 2 weeks in every room. And in some rooms, like Vegas, they'd give me 3 or 4 or 5 if I wanted. So the gigs just fell in the old days. And then everything's just been, fractured with COVID. And so now I'm just sort of sitting here going, hey, where's all the phone calls? Well, some clubs have gone away. Booking managers have changed. I'm now not 38 anymore. So I've just sort of started to realize I got to get on the phone and I got to do that thing a lot of musicians and entertainers have to do. I'm in that club now. I've got to hustle the gig. So all sorts of stuff coming up in the spring and fall, but I find myself mostly sitting in the living room with me and my dog, Nick, if you can see Nick.
Yeah.
And just trying to I think a lot of folks are doing this, right? Everyone's sort of trying to re-envision themselves or, just come out and do something a little differently than the way you did it before. And that's part of where the guitar comes in. I've got to sort of buckle down and figure out how I can turn that Kim McAllister song
into something else. That's so interesting that you say that, though, because I think a lot of people are, especially people that have been laid off, or they find themselves like at a point where they're thinking, what do I do next? Maybe it's you're retired. Maybe, you're just looking for the next to, do what you can do. And so it's the reinvention. I think it's something a lot of us are going through right now. It's why we're on YouTube.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I have a problem, and you may have, a lot of entertainers and artists have. I have ADD, so I have a million ideas, but the most promising idea is the next one that I haven't come up with yet. As soon as you get an idea and you buckle down on it, you start seeing the warts and you start realizing it's drudgery. You know, I just thought, I know a lot about stand-up, the art of stand-up. And so I've taught a lot of people, and I do workshops, these 0 to funny in 6 weeks, where I take mostly novices, occasionally an open micer or two. And by the end of 6 weeks, everyone's created 3 minutes of stand-up, and we do it on a Friday night in front of a live audience. And my friends just kept saying, why aren't you recording those in audio? Why aren't you recording those in little video snippets? Why aren't you coming up with a book? So I came up with 66 tips and tricks for comics. And so I just started scribbling them on napkins and putting them in a binder and then putting them in my computer. It just seemed easy. And then comes the details. How do you categorize them? Do you categorize them? How long should they be? Should you have, you know, and then all of a sudden, that's where my brain just goes, hurting me, not fun. Then I'm off to the gym. So I envisioned it. My friends have an inn up in Mendocino, and it's empty, like, you know, the middle of February and the middle of March. And they said, oh, come on up. We'll give you like the super duper cheapskate family and friends, and just lock in there and write your memoir. Just write every day. Just try to turn out, you know, 500, 2,000 words. You know, that's 3-4 pages at maximum. You know, just sit there. Don't even try to do it in order. Just sit. Worst gig ever, best gig ever, what it was like as a child. And so, you know, you go up there for 2 days and you start doing it and you're like, hey, look, people are abalone diving. And then, you know.
All right. You mentioned it. Worst gig ever. Let's talk about worst gig ever. What was it?
Well, I had other stories about that. I was taping a TV show for Showtime years ago when I was making fun of a plane crash that had happened. And luckily, I think no one had died in the plane crash. It was a commercial jet. And the pilot had never been in that kind of aircraft before. And we were taping in San Diego. John Biner was the host, if you remember that, to tell you how long ago that was. It might have been 30 years ago, 25 years ago. And the guy in the front row stands up. Get whether you're required to get 6 or 8 or 10 minutes on tape, that you get that 6 or 8 or 10 minutes. Because if the audience isn't laughing or something like that happens, they'll edit it out. And they'll do what they call sweetening it in those shows, which they'll just get general laughter from somebody who had a better set. And they'll put it in to people in the audience that weren't even in your audience necessarily, right? Yeah. And so I pulled it out, but it was a weird experience. But that was my old story, and another one about working at San Quentin. But here's the latest one. Maybe 3 years ago, I'm on stage at a country club in Santa Cruz, Pas Tiempo Country Club, and I'm doing a fundraiser for the University of California women's golf team, and there are pro golfers in the room. And so I'm supposed to do a little bit about, you know, maybe exercise or being a jock myself. I played football, was a snowboarder and all that. But my left arm had been bothering me for quite a bit of time. So I get up on stage to do my set, and they've got a podium on stage because they were giving awards out after their golf tournament. And at one point, I was going to tell them about how bad I am at yoga, that I'm the worst person in every yoga class everywhere. I'm the most rigid, stiff, non-yoga dude in the class. And so I go to grab the podium to move it. And as I tug it, my face just explodes in pain. I've had a lot of broken bones. You saw some of them.
Oh, I've seen that aftermath of that. Yes.
Yeah. Football, snowboarding, whatever. A couple of basketball, broken fingers, elbow to the nose, that kind of stuff. This was slightly different. It was like an explosion in my face where you really don't see what's in front of you. You really do see red. It's red and black and white. And there were palm trees and fireworks and squirrels. That's all I remember about it.
Oh, no.
And when I opened my eyes, they're howling, which I don't know what had happened in that 3 seconds that was going on. But I realized I had severely damaged my left arm somehow. And so I had just promised them that I was going to do a downward facing dog because I have an instructor that says it's a resting pose. And I get in it and show the audience how it's not a resting pose, you know, make jokes about my eyeballs bursting, you know. And so I get up, and luckily I had to do a half an hour, and I was about 28 minutes when that happened. So I said, they were howling. I hopped off the stage, and I went into the green room, the dressing room. It was a country club. So I went into whatever the locker room was, and I took my shirt off, and my bicep, which usually lives here, was up here on my shoulder. I'd torn my bicep completely off of my forearm on stage.
What?
Yeah. So that.
How does that even happen?
Yeah, they think a micro tear. I played football all through college, and you go tackling people. And as I used to joke in my stand-up, I went to tackle a guy once, and he was on his way to the NFL, and I was on my way to the hospital. So we were slightly different career paths in football. So,
that's not fake.
Out of your arm,
that's real.
And you go to the sideline, and the coach calls you all sorts of derogatory names, and they gives you a pain pill, and you go back in. And that happens when you're 22, and all of a sudden you're 55 or whatever I was. And then so that's why the doctors couldn't figure out why my arm was buzzing and weird, because it had a micro tear that sat there quietly. So you think that's a great story about how crappy the gig was, right? No, I go out to the bar and I tell the MC, hey, if you can ask anybody if they've got pharmaceutical grade painkillers. And I went to the bartender and said, can you get me a double bourbon of any kind? So I took that because I was in Santa Cruz and had to drive home. It was 11 o'clock at night on a Monday.
Oh, no.
I thought, I can do this. So I get in my car and I go about 2 blocks before I realize, as you know, I was a snowboarding fanatic. And I get 2 blocks before I realize it's my manual transmission Subaru Outback. I got to drive through the Santa Cruz Mountains 11 at night after a double bourbon. And I'm not encouraging the drinking and driving, kids. I'm 230 pounds, so it didn't really bother me much. And a pain pill, manual transmission on Highway 17. No. I just had to pull over like 3 times and just like scream out of the window. So yeah, there's probably more story than you wanted, but that would be the worst gig, having nothing to do with the wonderful golf team and the women's UC California golf team and all that. It had to do with just tearing your arm bicep off on stage.
Oh God.
And I had to complete the down dog because I had sold it. So I just put like a belt loop, my thumb in my belt loop, and I did a down dog on one hand. I threw the microphone down on the floor. And I was just yelling, see how relaxing this looks? You know, when friends drop over on a Saturday, they say, hey, where's Johnny? And, you know, my gal says, oh, he's in the living room watching a ball game, relaxing. You know, it's a bunch of jokes like that. So, yeah, there you go. So young kids out there listening, you got to commit to the bit. I don't care if you just tore your bicep ohr your arm. If you promise them a different dog routine, you got to deliver.
Once you're in it, you're in it. So before I let you go, I wanted to talk about politics with you because I know you have a take on this whole impending Trump arrest protests for me in New York situation. So I wanted to ask you, what are you thinking?
You know, I have pulled back a little bit from the politics, and there are 2 or 3 reasons, and we don't have a lot of time, so I'll be brief. But the first reason is everyone's so divided. When I was doing political, I used to work with Will Durst a lot. He was more the political humorist, and I was more the social satirist. And so he was more about what's going on in Washington and Sacramento, and I was more about how people respond to it, you know, and what motivates people to be pro-immigration or anti-immigration or whatever. But we were not as divided then. And it's not just the left from the right, it's the center from the left and the center from the right and the center left from the far left. I mean, you know, I just watched my wife, who was pretty active in that for a while. And she was, you know, sort of a centrist leftist having raging fights with way out there leftists and whatnot. So it just got to the point where it was very hard to say anything anywhere without offending people. That was problem one. People, it's not so much offending them that I care about. It's you lose them. Once you tell somebody that their political opinion is garbage, you don't agree with it, you've kind of lost them. You know, they're not as likely to laugh. So that was thing one. And thing two is we're just so balkanized with the way we gather news now. Like when I was a kid, you know, I'm old enough to remember when I was a kid, my parents watching a guy named Walter Cronkite. And this was, I mean, these people had gone to journalism school and they had master's degrees in journalism, and they worked at places like the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the LA Times or whatever. They tried to grab the most important stories and they tried to deliver them with the most, you know, objective view and try to show all sides. And now you've got people going in the room on both the left and the right that believe things. I think Mark Twain had a great line. He said, it's not what people know don't know. It's not what people don't know that scares me. It's what people do know that just ain't so that scares me. So interestingly, I have turned in a little more to making fun of my family and making fun of my declining body. And I still pass, I live at the epicenter of like PC wokeness, where I was told one time by a woman that just walking on stage was offensive because I'm a white male. And I had to tell her, well, the first thing is my name is Tony Lopez. It's a true story. I'm half Spanish and half Sicilian. Steel was a nickname I picked up in college because I came from Pittsburgh, so Johnny's Steel Town. But so when you're being told that you're mansplaining or being offensive just by where do you go from there? So
your very
so
existence is offensive.
When I take the stage just to tell people, yeah, my existence, which is of course crazy because my family's came here from poverty in both Spain and Italy and Sicily in the 19 teens, and we're themselves. My Spanish ancestors. I joke about this. My Spanish ancestors. This is true. Were indentured servants. I'm 2 generations away from indentured servants. And people talk about slaves, but there were as many or more indentured. They came while they were indentured servants, as they didn't have money for their passage, so they went from Spain to Hawaii. That's how it worked. And you'd spend a year there picking fruit, pineapple, coconuts, and whatnot. And they would have that passage and would be able to then come to the New World. And as I joke in my stand-up, so just to tell you the ancestors I come from, they were in Hawaii 100 years ago. They looked around, they saw unspoiled beauty, incredible sunsets, year-round pleasant weather, half-naked tanned women bobbing in the surf. And they said, screw this, let's move to Antioch. So So that's the kind of humor I do more. That's the kind of stuff I do more of now. I talk about people and their claims about who's privileged and who's not privileged and this and that, and I sort of dispel it with jokes like that. So that's and the other, just what if we have just 3 seconds, I'll tell you this. I was talking to Barry Weintraub, how you might know, and a few other comics, and it's hard to do topical political humor because, first of all, no one shares the same opinion. You go into the rooms today, and I don't want to sound like an old boomery Gen X guy talking about millennials, but these folks have watched TikTok. They couldn't tell you, they don't know the difference between the Civil War and the Vietnam War. They truly don't. And so that's one problem. You're going to a room full of people who aren't informed. Then the people who are informed are very divided, don't agree with you or each other or anything. But the main problem is there's a news cycle that has a new story every 2 minutes. And so you write these jokes and you hone them and you get on stage, and then they're worthless. And you don't even want to record them into a CD or even put them in a podcast because people go to listen to them a month later. I mean, I see people wearing masks in their YouTube videos and they're talking about masks in the pandemic. Who wants to see that? And that was a year ago, So I respect the Bill Maher's and the Will Durst and all those guys who keep at it and keep doing that. Brian Copeland and I had conversations about this, how you might want to listen to a Lenny Bruce album from the early 60s, but you don't want to listen to a Mort Saul album because he's talking about the White House and the Kennedys and McNamara. And it's Lenny Bruce has references that are no longer relevant, but the bit itself was a social political bit, about his experience in some situation or his observation. So it still works. So I don't know. I've stepped back a little from that for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. Can you believe that I just spoke with you for a half an hour and I can't believe it went by that fast. I really can't. So I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Well, I think you asked me a question and I spoke.
No, it's okay. Well, you're cutting out a little bit, so I think there's a delay and it's kind of hard to hear you, but I love you and I am so delighted that you came on the show today. Any shows? What's the next upcoming show? Or are you still kind of putting stuff together?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you with my pals, Michael, me, and Larry Brown, we're going to be doing a couple of old school comedy workshops. We're probably comedy shows. We're going to be probably at the Throckmorton in Mill Valley. We're going to be at the Punchline San Francisco. I'm doing a lot of outdoor stuff this summer. Winery, Retzlaff Winery out in Livermore. Wineries, rafting trips, comedy clubs. It'll be on my website as soon as I stop playing my guitar.
JohnnySteele.com. It'll work or it won't. We love you. Thank you for being here on the show. You're awesome. I hope you'll come back with us again. Bye. Johnny Steele, everybody. Yeah, that's right. This is the Mark Thompson Show. We're going to do a little more news and we're going to get a little more Mark. So let's get to it. I'm Kim McAllister on the Mark Thompson Show, and this is where your news sponsorship could live if you would like to sponsor the news on the Mark Thompson Show. Sponsorships are open. You can sponsor the news. You can sponsor a segment on the show like the Friday segment or Stories from the Sky if you like that one. If you've got a business to advertise, we would love to help you with it. It is the Mark Thompson Show, the Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com. Shoot us an email. Let's start the talking. The media spotlight is on Trump Tower and criminal court in New York City as people await the former president's possible indictment. A grand jury is deciding whether to file charges against him in the case of alleged hush money paid to adult film actress Stormy Daniels in 2016. The barricades are now in place and security is ramped up as a precaution. China is offering to help bring peace to Ukraine as that country fights a war against Russia. A foreign ministry spokesman said China is ready to take a constructive role in the process. National Security spokesman John Kirby previously said any such proposal has to include an unconditional and complete withdrawal of Russian troops from Ukraine. Don't know whether that's likely, but federal health officials say in a different story that life-threatening fungal infections are spreading at U.S. healthcare facilities. This is like The Last of Us. This is creepy. The CDC reporting cases of Candida auris infections have almost doubled between 2020 and 2021. Antibiotics not effective against fungus, and the CDC says patients on mechanical ventilators or have long hospital stays are at particular risk for infections. Again, this is a fungal infection.
That's not fake. That's real.
Candida auris. I don't know if you want the fungus because...
But that doesn't mean that it's a good thing.
The FAA is investigating another close call at Hollywood Burbank Airport in Southern California. A Southwest Airlines plane was on final approach Saturday morning when air traffic control spotted a Los Angeles Fire Department helicopter doing touch-and-go landings on the same active runway. Controllers waved off the commercial jet until that runway was clear. And Florida's Space Coast is preparing for an historic launch after 2 prior scrubs. It is the world's first 3D printed rocket set to blast off from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station late tomorrow night. Launch conditions for the next try, 95% go, they say. An Academy Award-winning actor, Tom Hanks, will deliver Harvard University's commencement address this year. University President Lawrence Bacot says Hanks was chosen because of contributions to the national culture and his ability to expand people's appreciation of stories and histories that have been previously unexamined. Harvard's commencement is on May 25th.
Hank's a Bay Area guy too, right?
Yeah, originally from Oakland, I believe.
Oakland went to school. He went to
Skyline High School, I think.
Yeah, and then he went to Chabot College, which is pretty 15 minutes from my house. So that's really cool.
So there you go. Tom Hanks at Harvard. This show is crowdfunded, and we appreciate your support. As a matter of fact, I think we have some thank yous to do now. Is that right? Do a little thank yous.
Yeah, we have a couple here. Let me pull these up for you. Starting with Sausalito Steve.
Sausalito Steve. Oh, thank you for the nice message and the $15.
So much.
We appreciate you so much. Thank you very much for the contribution.
Thank you so much.
We need it. We need sponsorships and we need to crowdfund the show. So we're grateful for that. Sausalito Steve and Beth Farmer, $19.99.
Thank you.
Real quality show today. That is what we aim for.
Thank you.
We're all about the quality here on the Mark Thompson Show. We are bringing it. You can. I have a naked boy coming to bring me a tea. Thank you very much. My son is homesick from school today, so this happens. Yeah. So thank you, Beth, for the $19.99 and Sausalito Steve. We appreciate you. Again, the ways to contribute here on YouTube, of course. You can also go to themarkthompsonshow.com. And that is where you'll find our Patreon, That is where you'll also find the PayPal section, and so you can contribute. And again, email us at themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com if you want to talk about sponsorship opportunities. I also love the pictures that you send and the comments as well. So yeah, let's take a little bit of, do we have a little Mark Thompson to share with the group?
Yep, a little more Mark, then we'll wrap up the show.
Let's do it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I love popping back in. You know I'm here for one reason and one reason alone, and that's
Mark's Madness.
That's right, everybody. Come on. We got a hot one going. Although we do, I want to, it's this drop.
It's about as bad as it can possibly get.
Against this drop.
What?
Yeah, either you vote for Simon.
It's about as bad as it can possibly get.
Or you vote for Oprah.
What?
Vote now live in the chat, live in the poll on YouTube, and until midnight tonight in the community section of our YouTube channel, and good luck! I don't know what to say. Kim, you...
Oprah. It's Oprah. I mean, how does she not? That's why she won awards throughout her career. You go up against Oprah for an Emmy, you know you're walking away a loser. It's always Oprah.
Well...
It's about as bad as it can possibly get.
And that's... upset potential, but I would say what would be the favorite?
What?
Yeah. What is really, it's so versatile, I guess might be the word I'd use. You know what I mean? Yeah. You just use it in so many different situations. But you could use it's about as bad as it gets.
It's about as bad as it can possibly
get. We could
get.
probably use that more than we do. But anyway, it's not a question of what's good for the show or which one we use more. It's a question of which one you want to vote on to the next round.
Yeah, what do you like better?
Yeah, so you can vote in the chat. You don't have to have a bracket. You don't have to have anything. You're listening on a podcast and you want to play along. We have many more to come, many more days of Mark's Madness still to come. You can join. Again, just simply, you don't have to register at all. You can vote in the community section of our YouTube channel, or again, right now, this hour on the show within the chat and then with the YouTube poll. All right.
How long does this thing go on? That's Mark's Madness.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, I got that. How long does this thing go on anyway? Let me just ask you. I mean, I'm just saying.
Y'all can all go to hell, and I'm going back to Texas.
Yeah, you can all go to hell. I'm going to Texas. You tell me when you all wrap this up. Albert, how long does this thing go on, as Kim asked?
This does go day for day match up with the actual March Madness. So the college basketball tournament that's going on with we're matching with the men's division, but then that'll be on April 4th. Okay, so April 4th will be the last day.
Yeah. All right. So Kim,
we're in it for the long haul, is what you're telling me.
There's a reason this place is fun.
All right, Kim, let's get on it.
All right.
All right. I don't want to have to question Kim's loyalty to Mark's Madness.
No,
that would be
I
am,
fully voting and participating in this.
All right. That's very, very good. All right. Kim, back to the live show. And again, just to remind everyone, it's either Simon this hour.
It's about as bad as it can possibly get.
Or it's Oprah.
What?
Okay, those are the two going down against each other this hour in Mark's Madness. All right. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show. The Mark Thompson Show.
Y'all can all go to hell, and I'm going back to Texas.
I misspoke.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Why are you yelling?
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this?
We could try ignoring it, sir.
They pay me a lot of money for having attitude.
There's never been anything like this.
We've never seen anything like it before.
Nobody has ever put something like this together that I've ever seen.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
There is nothing in our history that quite compares to this.
I think I'm the most honest human being, perhaps, that God ever created.
God bless America. The end.
Someone did this to spoil our Christmas.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Sayonara, sucker!
You know what? Hell, you created havoc and chaos.
I don't think you should apologize for how you feel.
Do I hit it long? Is Trump strong? Huh?
Who is having that conversation?
It is the live Mark Thompson show. Thank you for being here. Luis with $9.99. Thank you so much. Kim, would you introduce us to your dog? Can't have Nugget grab all the publicity. Come here, Charlotte. Come. This is Charlotte. This is my golden retriever, Charlotte. Usually she's really quiet, just kind of lays up, curls in a ball at my feet and hangs out. Charlotte, say hi to the nice people over here. There you go. Yeah.
There's never been anything like this.
She's too heavy to lift, or I would lift her up and show you. But thank you, Luis, for asking. That's Charlotte. She just hangs out in here with me. Maria also says, love your dog, Kim. And the lady Beatrice, I have that mug. Mine says, why are you yelling? I love the Why Are You Yelling mug. I wish I had that one too. This is a Nikki Maduro show mug. Nikki will be along to talk about what is coming up on her show in just a moment. But I do want to talk about Stories from the Sky because, Albert, you have outdone yourself today and really put in some great stories. So let's do another Stories from the Sky.
We have clearance, Clarence. Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Enough is enough! I have had it with these monkey-fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane! Everybody strap in!
Let us begin the Stories from the Sky with customs officers confiscating 6 illegal giant African snails at the Detroit airport. Wow. Yes, they are unusual. They call it potentially dangerous. This was in a passenger's luggage. 6 giant African snails. These snails, which were alive, were found in the suitcase of a traveler. I have to show you guys this picture because, oh my goodness. I mean, I can't imagine that this is what you would carry in your luggage anyway. I have to save it and show you.
I think I got it.
Are you going to show it? Okay. So this was found in a suitcase of a traveler who arrived in Detroit from the West African country of Ghana, according to U.S. Customs and Border Protection. These snails are considered a prohibited organism in the United States because they can cause diseases in humans. They can wreak significant havoc in the environment if released in the wild. We don't want these here.
My bad. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. You can't bring this here. Despite this, people around the world eat these giant African snails, and some people keep them as pets. These were alive, so I don't know whether they were headed to the dinner plate or a fish tank, but apparently
you didn't think they were emotional support snails, Kim?
Emotional support snails. That's right. Just that they provide comfort and calm. You know, these snails can grow up to 8 inches long. They're native to East Africa, and they can carry a parasite called rat lungworm that leads to meningitis in humans. In addition, they eat at least 500 different types of plants. They even consume the plaster and stucco off houses as a source of calcium. That can lead to environmental damage if they are released into the wild. So, in July, a Florida county apparently was placed under quarantine after officials discovered a fast-growing population of these snails.
That's not
thought
fake.
to have
That's real.
originated in the illegal pet trade. So,
Of course, we had them in Florida. You know, Kim. It's
of course they are. Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
So apparently these snails can produce up to 2,500 eggs per year. So once they are here, it's really difficult to control this population. So yeah, they got them. They got them at the Detroit airport. How many of those? 6 of them. Think of all the ones that are coming through that don't get detected. Chris, what do you got in your luggage, ma'am? Well,
that's a hard one to explain. Like, hey, I just didn't look at the rules. You know, sorry, I didn't see the guidelines for African snails. Sorry.
Okay, so this next story, I want you to vote in the chat because I don't know whether you consider peanut butter a solid or a liquid, but there's some discrepancy. Thanks to John Daly for this story. Apparently, the New York Times article on this one, the headline reads, "Peanut butter stirs an old debate to the TSA. What is a liquid?" So here's the story. This is this man, Patrick Neve, who was on his way to a speaking engagement, he had to surrender his peanut butter. He brought a jar of Jif peanut butter last week, and it was not Jif natural peanut butter is what the label said, but he had to surrender it at TSA. He says, the quote is, "I tried to take the peanut butter through the airport security, but the TSA said, sorry, no liquids, gels, or aerosols." He said, "I want you to tell me which of those things you think peanut butter is." And so the TSA said, "You know what? It is not what you may think it is. It is not allowed past security." They say this definition of a liquid is something that has no definite shape, and it takes a shape dictated by its container. So that's true. If you scooped out all the peanut butter, it would land in a blob on the counter. It is dictated by the shape of its container. But apparently it's considered to be spreadable, so it falls under the rule for liquids, gels, and aerosols. And the TSA says, as we frequently seek to remind travelers, if you can spill it, spray it, spread it, pump it, or pour it, then it is subject to the 3.4 ounce limitation for liquids, gels, and aerosols. Yeah. So I guess peanut butter is a liquid now. You can't bring it on the TSA.
Maybe we could try the crunchy one and make it even more like of a gray area. The one with the one with the actual
though.
peanut.
You could still spread it, pump it. What was all that? You could still do all those things. You could spill it, even if it's chunky, right? You could spill it, you could spray it, you could spread it, pump, maybe not pump it. You could maybe not pour it, but you could spread it. I think it fits the spread it rule.
If this isn't just the New York Times, or if this catches like in GMA or like mainstream networks, you know what peanut butter companies should do? They should just release TSA friendly like containers of peanut butter if it catches on.
Well, I think that's their next ad campaign for Jif. Is it a liquid? Is it a solid? It's peanut butter.
We're on to something, Kim. Maybe we're in the wrong profession. Maybe we need to be in the peanut butter industry.
The Lady Beatrice says peanut butter is a solid. TSA just doesn't like peanut butter. Anonymous says you can pump smoke. Is smoke a gas or a liquid by this logic? Well, if it takes the shape of its container, if you pumped smoke into a container, I don't know. You're confusing me, Anonymous. I don't know. JR says nut gel. Bad name. Yeah. You can't argue with the TSA and miss your flight. It's up to you, says Square.
Here's a good one by Tiff. Maybe because of its being an allergen. That's a good point.
No.
You know, you open.
No, that's
you
not
open
why.
up if you open up a thing of peanut butter on an airplane, that's kind of risky.
I mean, maybe, but I don't think that's why they're considering. I think they're looking at the consistency of it and saying, nope, it falls under the liquid category, and therefore you can't bring your jar of Jif onto the airplane. I don't know. I thought that was an interesting case. It made me think about the consistency of peanut butter anyway. Okay, so here's something I would rather have on the airplane rather than peanut butter. It is gold bars worth 4 million pounds laundered by South American drug cartels, seized at Heathrow Airport while en route to Switzerland. Albert, can we get a picture of this one too?
Yeah.
This is, the National Crime Agency reclaimed 104 kilograms in gold bars, some in the shape of hearts, little gold hearts, after they were found hidden in the cargo section of a plane in June of 2019. The haul was being transported from the Cayman Islands to Switzerland via Heathrow. This is like something out of a movie. They had earlier been shipped to the Caymans on a private jet from Venezuela. Look at that, gold bars. So they had false paperwork created to show the origin of the gold as the Dominican Republic when it actually came from Venezuela. At the High Court, the judge ordered the NCA, the authorities, could seize the valuable metal as it was the proceeds of crime. So that means it's the government domain, apparently. They were given a civil recovery order for 80% of the gold under the Proceeds of Crime Act. The remaining 20% will be returned to companies with a financial interest in the gold. I have a financial interest in the gold. I want it to be.
We have financial interest in the show, so maybe we could kind of pivot this for.
I'd like some gold on the Mark Thompson show. Absolutely,
that would be nice.
The NCA branch commander said criminals are attracted to gold as a way of moving drug money due to the high value contained in relatively small amounts. So yeah, this was all drug money out of South America.
I don't know about their gold though. Their gold is pretty inconsistently formed. I'm not sure if they all had
they
the
could have
same.
done better.
Yeah, all the same value here.
There was no one really paying attention to. There was no QA guy, right? Yeah. There was no what happened to just your general loaf pan? Because I don't know. Yeah, right.
Yeah, this isn't quite the gold I see in the movies. So maybe this is just the reality of it, But
yeah, it's not high quality gold. It's not high quality like the Mark Thompson show, but you know what? I'll take that gold anyway. But think about where it went. It went from the South American drug cartels to the Cayman Islands to London en route to Switzerland. This is like international, gold swindling, something, money laundering. There's a movie. I'm sure there's a movie coming out.
If they hustled their way all the way to London, I'm sure they could have done this not commercially and have gotten the gold where they needed it to go. Because going the commercial route is very sketchy. Because right when TSA or whatever their customs see anything remotely suspicious, they're gonna open that bag.
So regarding Lori, regarding the peanut butter situation, Lori has a really good comment. She said, you can stir another potentially explosive substance into peanut butter. Also put drugs in baggies and bury it in the peanut butter to smuggle. Did that with the jar of Pond's in the 70s and 80s. What? The mixture where you can't see anything inside that could be in little baggies. That's true. And I guess if it was in peanut butter, then the drug sniffing dogs couldn't get to it. I don't know.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Very, very good point. Cheap smugglers. Yeah, cheap smugglers with no quality control for sure.
Cheap but not cheap smugglers, because that's a lot of money right there. It's almost it's like I think I looked it up, almost $5 million US dollars.
Gold laundering, says Karen Cooper. Gold finger, says Calvin Wong. Yeah, just the pictures though of all that gold. Pardon me. It's just kind of. I think anytime you see a picture of gold, my eyes just kind of widen, like, oh, that's
and it
that's
seems
cool.
like very like, oh wow, it's gold. You don't see this very often, including in payment form. Like we don't think we think of cash, we think of the other avenues. And Kim, you actually had another like a Stories from the Sky segment story in your news, right? You were talking about
John
Wayne it was at John Wayne Airport.
It was at Hollywood Burbank Airport in Southern California. That was where there was a Southwest airline on final approach when a Los Angeles Fire Department chopper was doing the touch and go landings on the same tarmac. So they're calling it another close call. And they've had a couple of these where, like,
JFK,
at one point, the wings clipped.
We had a couple. Yeah. It's very. What's going on? It's that and the train derailments. What's going on?
Yeah, it's not a good look. It doesn't inspire confidence, one could say. So that is our Stories from the Sky here on the Mark Thompson Show.
This has been Stories from the Sky. The captain has turned off the seatbelt sign, and you are now free to move about the cabin.
Pardon me for coughing there. We've got some great things coming up on the Nikki Maduro Show. She was supposed to pop in and talk a little bit about it, but we'll get Nikki at 12 o'clock on the Nikki Maduro Show. So I hope that you will join us over there for some great conversations. Always a lot of fun on that show as well. TheNikkiMaduroShow.com. You can search for Nikki Maduro, Medoro, on YouTube and find it that way as well. And Albert usually puts a link to the show at the bottom. We thank you for being here and thank you for your contributions and your chats and all the fun that we've had today. We are going to see Mark Thompson in snippets again tomorrow before he comes back on what is indeed the Mark Thompson Show. And Mark will be live with us again on Thursday and Friday as well. Tomorrow on the Mark Thompson Show, we've got some things coming up. Albert, you've got the list, right? What are we doing?
Oh, we have John Rothman. John Rothman
on the show tomorrow. Yes, excellent. I'm also going to try to get Ngaio Belam to come on the show tomorrow. I know you like to talk about weed, so maybe we'll do that. I have some other fun guests for you as well. So thank you for being here. We love you. It is awesome to have you along for the ride here on the Mark Thompson Show. I'm Kim McAllister, and until tomorrow, I should say, as Mark always says, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.